Sorry. I'll now call to order the regular meeting of the Lake Forest School District 67 Board of Education for April 24th, 2018. May I have a roll call, please, Eileen?
Mrs. Lavert?
Aye, here.
Mr. Folker?
Here.
Mrs. Sands?
Here.
Mr. Burkowski?
Here.
Dr. Lemke?
Here.
Mr. Novit?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for being here. As you know, District 67 has a vision statement, which we've been using for the past 5 years to drive our decision making. We spent a lot of time and money recently pursuing milestone number 6, which is the environment milestone. And that focuses on reimagining our learning spaces to enhance the learning experience. By now, everyone probably knows that we have an awesome new space at Deer Path Middle School called Haskins 2.0. Hopefully, most people also know that our core classrooms will be undergoing a major transformation this summer with new furniture, lighting, and audiovisual being installed. More recently, this board approved additional funds for the middle school science labs to be upgraded. So while our physical environment may never truly be finished, we're definitely making progress on the environment milestone. Tonight I want to touch on a few other aspects of our vision, areas that affect our students every bit as much as the physical spaces. We have some students joining us tonight who will provide us a presentation of a project they recently finished, and it's a project that highlights the progress we are making towards achieving the district's vision. It's a presidential campaign advertisement and rap debate connecting the past, famous U.S. presidents, with the present, modern issues our country faces. This inquiry-driven project is a great example because while it highlights progress in other areas of the vision beyond the environment, the upgraded learning spaces also directly support these type of student projects, which is exactly how it's supposed to work. The milestones all working together to create an optimal learning experience. Our vision statement calls for our school district to be an innovative learning community where students cultivate their minds, create enduring connections, and discover their passions. And our core value statement speaks of students taking risks and being actively engaged in their learning. And finally, we find within our milestones the instruction goal, which states that instruction is to be highly differentiated and inquiry-based, driven by student needs, interests, and passions. We also see from our milestones that we need the highest quality talent in order to achieve this type of instruction. And fortunately, we have that type of talent within our district, some of which is even in our room tonight. Thank you for being here. High quality, dedicated, passionate, and creative staff members. While the students are the stars of the show tonight, and they're the beneficiaries of our significant shift towards project-based learning model, it's the teachers who do the hard work to make those experiences actually happen. And how did I hear about this project? Our superintendent tells us that the dinner table is a litmus test to check our progress on achieving our vision. Do we own the dinner conversation, he often asks. If our students are excitedly telling us about the interesting things they do in school during dinner, then it seems we're on the right track. And that is exactly how I heard about this project at our dinner table. The project is titled Early Years of the Republic, Past Meets Present. The project was done in small groups and included 2 tasks. First, the group was to create a campaign advertisement for the 2020 presidential election for a past president that the students believed would best address issues facing our nation today. And second, the group participated in an election debate with one member of the group acting as the candidate in a Hamilton-style rap battle. The students needed to incorporate information about the past presidents as well as issues facing modern society. The project touches on so many of the themes that we find in our vision statement, and it actually backs up what you were saying to us about 20 minutes ago in our workshop. It's a different way that our students are learning. The students collaborated, working together in small groups on the inquiry-based project. The process was hugely creative and engaging as the students chose their music and wrote their own lyrics, working real historical facts with modern issues into the lyrics. Not only did the students learn from each other within their groups as they did the project, they also learned from each other across the groups and even across classrooms as they saw and listened to the other team's projects, including opening statements, debate arguments, and rebuttal statements in a traditional debate format. And where did much of this work take place, and where did the multiple classes come together? In the redesigned H2O space. Our physical environment supporting the collaborative work on an inquiry based project driven by high-quality teaching staff, resulting in engaging and outstanding learning experience. Our vision brought to life. So big kudos first to the 7th grade social studies team, the staff, for putting this project-based learning experience together. Thank you. Outstanding work by our outstanding staff. And next, big kudos to our students, who we're going to hear from in a moment, for embracing the project, for working together, for being inspired to move out of their comfort zone, for taking risks, for letting their passions show. One of them, who is supposed to be here, is calling me yet again. I could answer and put her on speakerphone, but I won't. Tonight, I'm pleased to have students from 2 of the rap battle groups for our own miniature version of the debate. On one side of the debate, we have presidential candidate James Monroe, represented by Nikki Singh, Eche Oke, Amelia Fontana, and Natalie Gex. On the other side of the debate, we have presidential candidate George Washington, represented by Natalie Stepanians, Morgan Saltzman, Michael Clarkson, and John Borkowski. Up first will be George Washington's group, and this is their campaign slide.
I need the microphone. I'm special. We ran a campaign for the presidential candidate George Washington. His many accomplishments included, I can't read my tiny handwriting, bringing America out of debt. He was a general in the Revolutionary War and helped us win and bring America to this amazing country we have today. And he wrote the Statement of Neutrality. The modern issues we decided to focus on were the war between other countries, the division between the people of our country, and America's current issue of debt. I present to you George Washington. Yeah, y'all can't handle this. It's George Washington, Cincinnatus of the West. Yeah. It's Washington, bro, without American foe. 7 years we won the American War, never done before. As a general, I beat the British, North Korea's next. Now I'm kidding, won't do that. Got neutrality so fast, I'm at Hamilton too, and my cabinet crew. This is the first press. Who the heck up has been you? And you know I tackled that, cause I ain't helping you. Yeah, I'm talking about you, James, begging for attention from a slave abusing you. But you still raised our debt in your time, yeah, that's true. And I got the documents to prove, and all the other countries too. Don't make me tell them the truth. And I just rallied on your relation. Sorry, son, Virginia's where you're from. You chew him like the gum. And you Monroe too, economic depression just for fun. Failed war on Canada run. Catch me on the podium, I cannot be outdone. Roach is #1, it's Washington, bro. It's Washington, bro. It's Washington, bro. I said it's Washington, bro. You know it, Washington, individuality poppin'. Unity's my vision, and yes, I hate division. Virginia is my country, no political parties. Cause Grant Adams is who I pity. I end my distract here, cause you know I stay lit.
Wow. And now we hear from James Monroe's group. Jordan, can you turn the volume down a tad bit? Don't want to miss James Monroe.
Hey, come on, it's time for the election, and we're gonna find out who's gonna be the next president. You want someone who's gonna stand with you, who's gonna tell you the truth, who's gonna fight for you. With James Monroe, we're guaranteed to succeed with his great kind of courage, great diplomacy. You got the nation healing cause the air fields and made life easier for you. I mean, let's not forget about equality and how James Monroe fought against slavery. But not only did he fight against slavery, but also never gonna spend it for you. I mean, there's economic depression. Now you tell me he's gonna get you employment. Now, let me explain. Have you heard Dr. McCullough Monroe dropped into your nation safe from others alone? But with this in play, do you know what happened? All these Americans gained their jobs back. And this is what they said. Hey, it's here where we live and thrive. And finally let our happiness reside. Now don't get me started on all the others. I mean, you really think you can beat this runner? Hey Washington, you were the only one without a party. Do you think this hurt the government? I hate to say it, but I think you're done. I guess the media was right, you really are a monarch. Hey Jefferson, now do you really insist? Are you fighting for equality because you only Russian? I guess you had over 300 slaves for what? Free labor for the debts you couldn't pay? You even once stated the hour so honest, every time you listen out there would be a spawner. So, be honest today, tell the people how you despise them. Come on, Alice, let me tell you about you. You might be number 2, but ain't it right for you? Without the public, you hit the back. Aren't that grand president? Cause the public is supposed to be your inspiration, give you dedication, give you realization. But without the public, you lost your inspiration, all your dedication, and all your ideas fell to the floor. All this did was make people ignore you. Now don't get me started on Madison. You started the war, but just told the war that broke this nation. 7,000 poorly trained men with 16 U.S. military. You sent America to war that it could not afford. And we were the ones who paid the consequences. We both know things wouldn't work with you as president. So why don't you just hand it over, Mr. Madison? Mr. Madison, why don't you just hand it Washington? Mr. Washington, Mr. Washington, cause I'm James Monroe. I've been waiting for so long, so vote for me. And I'll fight for all. James Monroe for the 2020 election, people!
Thank you very much, all of you, both of you, for the raps, as well as all of you for being here and your participation. Certainly, education has changed. I was thinking about when I was taking notes in 7th grade on my social studies teacher in my notebook. And so thank you all. Questions, comments from board members?
That was awesome. Thank you. And thank you to the teachers who, wow, created this learning experience. Thank you.
Anything?
Well, nobody else has a question. I can't wait to ask one. So tell us about what surprised you. What did you learn in the course of this thing? What we hear is project-based learning makes it stick. So what did you get out of this?
Any one of you can answer. Just go up to the microphone.
And by the way, you guys really do a good job, man, a great job. Terrific. Glad you put yourselves out there.
You can use either microphone. You can use the one in your hand or the one on the podium.
All right, so
Oh, just ignore me.
Is there a button on that one?
I think that would be way safer.
okay, thank you. So when I first heard about this assignment, I was very excited because it's not really something you expect from like a school, and I love music. I keep talking about that. But it was very exciting, but I was also a little bit, I don't know, not certain that this would work very well because it kind of seemed a little shaky. But like, you know, when you like actually got onto the stage, or you know, the performance area, it was, you like heard about all these many different like perspectives of people who like, you know, wrote their raps in the perspective of one president, and it's like, I mean, I learned a lot, and it was very entertaining in the process. I wasn't like falling asleep as I was like, okay, well, Madison did this. It was really like actually fun. I was getting into it. I think everyone had fun while, you know, rapping and like making the lyrics, you know, and watching everyone else. So.
Morgan, definitely an Eche. Thank you for coming. Mr. Simic just asked about the process and what was engaging and what you learned, so thank you for being here. If you want to join in after Morgan, let us know what you thought was interesting or engaging about the process. We'd love to hear from you too.
Something that was like really interesting to me actually about the project was being able to embody the perspective of like the president that you were assigned to, because normally we have all of our own beliefs and we don't really get to explore others. So putting ourselves in the shoes of this president, having to write a rap from their perspective, making the best campaign ad, so something that they would do. It's not coming from us, it's coming from them. So learning about their perspective on things and what they did to change and to make America how it is now is probably one of the most interesting things I learned about, and see how other people embodied the perspective of their president and how they kind of presented their rap, how they presented their campaign ad, instead of just having it be, oh yeah, that's obviously from them. No, it's from their president. It's not just their influences, it's the president's influences. And that's really interesting from a school basis, because usually, I mean, I guess we do have a lot of our own opinions, but bringing in others as well. And I think it's also a learning standpoint, like, you need to be able to, like, see all of the big picture as well. Like, I think that's another just kind of, like, theme for this.
Great, thank you, Morgan. And part of the pleasure for me in watching this is I think you guys were a little nervous when you came out here, and frankly, you would never ever know it. But that's part of what we want to learn and teach too, is taking a risk and getting out of your comfort zone. So thrilled that you guys came and that you're willing to come to the microphone again and speak.
Yeah, okay, so I think this project was so much fun, and I had a good time with it. So I learned a lot about James Monroe at the same time, and I learned how he thought about political things and like how he acted to them. So that was a fun project, and I liked it.
I really, like everyone else has been saying, I think this project was very helpful for many people because like originally before we had like this idea, we were just going to take notes on the presidents and just learn what they did, their accomplishments and their failures. But I think that not only was this just a fun project, but it also sticks into the mind better. And especially when a lot of people like in our school, it was based on Hamilton and based on raps and like musicality and like passion. And I think that a lot of kids at our school have this passion for music, and combining their passions and their hobbies with learning is a very good way to get people to catch on to things quicker, learn things quicker, and it also allows them to just have fun while they're learning. And I think it was a really good experience, and I was actually nervous about doing this, and I thought people wouldn't take this seriously. I thought people were just gonna blow over it, but it turned out to be such a successful project, and I'm very happy that we did it.
Any other questions or comments from anyone up here, anyone back there?
So my only comment is I appreciate that you all came and shared this with us, and I would like to say to my fellow board members, I would love for us to see things like this more often so that we can have that. I think this gives us a great feel of what is changing and what is happening in our classrooms and how what's happening. When we see it written down on paper that we're doing inquiry or that we're doing project-based learning, that's fine, but this helps us to really experience what that means for our students, and I think that's incredibly helpful.
No, agreed. It gives us a little inspiration, makes us do our jobs better, and we enjoy seeing you. So thank you very much for coming today.
So I'll share both something with them that you guys and girls told me and vice versa. First, the vice versa. Half an hour ago, we were in a different room in a different meeting, and the question was, what makes our district different, and what's different about our education now than it was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when we were in school. And what you just demonstrated, it's all under this umbrella called inquiry-based learning or project-based learning. And that is one of the things that makes our school district different and special. So thank you for sharing. And for the folks up here, I had the pleasure of meeting with these girls over lunch briefly today to talk about tonight, and a number of them said, I'm not going to call out names, that maybe they were going to freak out tonight, or maybe they were going to get nervous, or maybe they weren't going to do it, and we had a little system of they could let me know, so if they weren't, fine. But all of them got up, and all of them did it, and we talked about taking risks and thinking outside the box, and you all did a fantastic job. So thank you all so much, and thank you representing the staff as well, Elena. So you guys were absolutely fantastic. As I mentioned to you, you're welcome to stay. The meeting does not get more exciting from here on out. We just peaked, I know. The superintendent goes next. You've created a very hard act for him to follow. That ends the president's report. Up next is the superintendent's report. was a bit of a weird setup tonight.
All right, well, this is going to be a super come down. I'm going to head out here.
Right. Yes, that's great.
All right, well, that was terrific. And so now for, this is as much as anything else a reminder of why we come to meetings and the work that the board does to support teaching and learning in the district. So each of you that is at the board table stands on the shoulders of people that came before you. And one of the things that came before all of us was the construction of buildings that were built in the 50s and the 60s that this board and boards prior to you invested a huge amount of time and effort in. And I wanted to recap publicly some of the work that we've done and the work ahead and some of the rationale for that. One of the things to keep in context is just prior to this board being seated, or many of the members of this board being seated, where it was the crash of 2008 and the ensuing years when the district was really in hunker-down mode. You can't invest in facilities, you had to ratchet back and had to survive the storm. And so that's what happened from 2008 to 2011. 2012, we had an absolutely terrible parking lot at Deer Path. Some of you may remember, a large parking lot that needed to be replaced, and so that was one of the first things that the board took on. Then the following year were some educational things mixed in with some security and some other more practical things. The cube, that was created prior to all of our arrival, but it was executed while some of us were here. And that was and is a super engaging space. It was also the first year that we did Deer Path West flooring, and Mrs. Levert and Mr. Folker were there, what day was that? Yesterday, right? It all runs together. Walking the building and seeing that, and one of the things that Mr. Folker pointed out was the degree to which the building moved from looking like a very old and tired building to a much newer building simply with the changing of the flooring. So the appearance and the new floor and also the abatement is a very significant expense in that year, significantly transformed the space as well. The following year, it may sound like a silly thing, but we had a mechanical screen that shielded noise at Cherokee. That was actually a very expensive undertaking in that year. And then we got into some things that at least 3 of you were present for and voted for and had the privilege of funding and overseeing, beginning with the STEM labs. That's about $500,000 that were invested there. And then we also took care of other elementary flooring and abatement, painting, and the Sheridan parking lot. The following year, Life Skills Classroom at Deer Path. We talked about that yesterday. And then the final building was completing the flooring at Deer Path East. This past year was really a very significant year when we did the Haskins. We also did the welcome centers, and in light of some of the recent school tragedies, I think that was certainly a very prudent expenditure. We probably hear that from members of the community as well. So the welcome centers, the vestibules, and then also importantly the nurses' offices. We did not have a wheelchair-accessible nurses' office in any of our 5 buildings, and as these things sometimes go. No sooner did we think about doing a bathroom in a nurse's office. We had a couple kids in wheelchairs, so that really reinforced the prudence of that decision. So a couple of things that are ongoing and are virtually completed, if not now completed. We're done with the roofing in the district, which may not sound like a really exciting thing, but that is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment annually. Likewise, the boilers, those are 50-year boilers. Likewise, the paving. I think we are just about done with the paving. So you've had a combination of basic infrastructure things that we couldn't attend to, and also looking towards educational and instructional commitments that we've made. The sum total of these things is about $7.5 million over the last 5 years. So a very substantial investment, not that we don't have a ways to go, but certainly that is a significant start on providing safe and clean work and learning spaces for our students and our staff. So upcoming things, some things that we've already approved. So now we're really getting into things that will, again, impact instruction. The furniture in our core classrooms, the LED lighting, which does not sound to the casual listener like a very exciting thing, is actually perhaps the most sought-after thing from our teachers, because teachers are able to change the moods within the classroom. Also, the AV, the projectors that we have in the classrooms, you have to have the shades down on some of them. Otherwise, it is they're not bright enough. Also, the sound systems, we begun to get some very positive feedback. So we've got a couple sample systems. These are things that, there are two types. One is a standalone speaker in class. Another one are little microphones around the classroom that are a lot more flexible. What's noticeable about this, and what's good about this, is the teachers that are using them. Some of the teachers may not be all that crazy about it, may not think that this is effective. But what happens is when they turn it off, the kids say, "Hey, that thing's not on." And so the ability to hear for young kids is fundamental in their ability to learn. And so I'm really thrilled that our staff has been trying out the sound systems. Likewise, the Cherokee Playground, this will be the final playground of the district that we'll need to update. Other things on the horizon and tentative or possible, we're going to talk about science labs. There's an action item tonight to order drawings for the science labs at Deer Path East and West, and then also some of the things that are antiquated in the district. They may be grandfathered in. We may be able to say we are grandfathered under ADA, but there are ways to help our students navigate the building more seamlessly. And some of that is very practical, like ramps and stairs, but other things are they're aesthetic. Doors, a number of the doors and older parts of the building are very tired looking, and what go along with doors are a very practical thing. That's also significant for ADA, and that is the ability to open a door with a closed hand or an elbow. It also has to do with the safety feature as well, the ability to lock the classroom from inside, which we currently do not have that ability. So back to the investments, I have said many times that the community needs to know the degree to which this board has stepped up and updated its buildings, and this is the tangible evidence of that fiscal effort towards that. But I think most importantly is the coming effort that we'll experience in the next year or two in a change in furniture, the mobility of that furniture, the ease of clearing out a space like this in a room for kids to be mobile and active, and the lighting and the sound system, as well as good places for kids to play. So this is very focused. These investments, every single one of them, will impact every single student throughout the course of their day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Questions or comments for our superintendent? Okay, thank you. We move on to public participation. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Are there any members of the public who are here tonight? Seeing no members of the public, we will move on. Board reports, we have no, admin reports. We have no admin reports. We move to board committees. Board of Ed, chaired by Jeff.
Thank you, Mike. The Education Committee met this past Friday, April 20th, here on the West Campus. Meeting was called to order at 8:05. We had a nice full agenda. This was an added meeting to take care of some topics that had not been properly finished at our previous meeting, and to ensure that our agenda was clear for the May meeting so we can talk about the strategic plan. We discussed the science resource adoption recommendation. Renee Fitzsimmons provided an overview. As I reported last month, the district has decided to move forward with Discovery Ed textbook as our science resource for grades 6 through 8 starting next year. Laura Douglas came and provided the committee with an overview of the Discovery Ed website. Laura is a science teacher at DPM West. Some of the benefits that she showed us that are using this platform are things such as Discovery Ed has an interactive glossary embedded in the verbiage that's found in every lesson. It has a read aloud feature, so unlike a textbook, obviously if a child needs some additional support by listening, the website provides read aloud. You can also adjust to different reading levels, so if a child is at a different reading level than perhaps their grade, you can adjust the way the verbiage is presented in such a way that the child has a better understanding of what they're reading. Students can also watch videos and interact with the text. The search feature also provides grade level responses. So if a student decides they need to learn more or need to understand a term better and they do a search on it, the explanation that comes back is age appropriate and grade appropriate. So you're not getting college level definitions on things or feedback for a kid in, say, 6th or 7th grade. And also the teachers have the ability to create a national NGSS aligned assessment by using this tool. So really a neat resource that we're going to be have access to starting next year. The use of these textbooks will cost the district $48 per pupil, but that comes with a 6-year subscription. So using our enrollment expectations for next year, this comes up to around $25,000, correct? That we will be paying in year 1, but that's for a 6-year subscription. So it's an upfront cost, but we don't pay again for 6 years. Unless, of course, we get more people. We have to go out and buy additional subscriptions if enrollment increases. But again, that's just a 1 year as well. So we will be discussing this and approving this expenditure at the May board meeting, so you will learn more about it then. One thing that did come up as we discussed this was, and this, Kent, is something we might want to talk about in public or in policy, but the question was, is this considered a textbook? Part of the board's responsibilities and our powers is to approve curriculum, textbooks, and educational resources. And this kind of falls between an educational resource and a textbook because it's utilized like we've utilized textbooks, but it's not an actual book. So it's probably something we should discuss in policy to understand if we need to clarify that in some way, knowing that this is probably the future of how we're going to be utilizing digital resources. So. The second topic we discussed was the social emotional learning curriculum and resource adoption. The district held an SEL Institute Day back on March 23rd, where staff spent time discussing how to embed social emotional learning standards into the curriculum, figuring out where SEL standards and targets are already being taught throughout the curriculum, and gathering data from teachers. As we reported last month, the district is moving forward with Lion's Quest as our resource in helping us implement SEL standards. There is professional development plan for all teachers and staff. Was it this summer we're going to be doing that for the next year, or will it be next year? Over the summer? Both, okay. Kate Kavanaugh, our Director of Student Services, gave the committee an overview of SAIL. SAIL is S-A-I-L, and stands for Structured Academic Integrated Learning. It is a collection of supports and services designed to specifically meet the needs of students with autism, as well as children with similar behavioral, social, or special needs issues. These supports and services will initially be implemented at Cherokee School for the 2018-19 school year to address identified student needs that are coming in that building. The Cherokee staff will be receiving training this spring on SAIL, and will also get additional coaching from NSSED, which, Suzanne, NSSED is currently utilizing this same approach right?
So NSSED has a segregated sale program, which is an option for outplacement of students from member districts. And so this approach is used in that program.
And one of the benefits of us implementing that within our district is that will allow us to retain students in their home schools versus having to outplace. So the good news is this is a cost-neutral option, and in long term would actually potentially be a cost savings to the district, so we don't have to outplace for tuition.
And gives students access to general education, which in the Outplace program, they don't have it because it's physically not available at the space where they're receiving their educational services.
Okay. Lastly, we had Judy Epke came and talked about the learning management system update. We talked about this last month as well. You know, as you probably know, we currently utilize Edmodo as our learning management system in grades 5 through 8, but we are currently trialing 2 other platforms, Google Classroom and Schoology, to see if there is a better alternative. Judy provided the committee with an overview of the trial that's been going on for the last several months and talked about the pros and cons identified by teachers for each platform, and will be coming forward to the board in the May meeting to discuss the recommended option going forward. Lastly, we also discussed the pilot program relative to implementation of a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 relationship in the kindergarten and first grade classrooms for iPads to students. We currently do utilize iPads in all of our kindergarten and first grade classrooms, but only on a broadly shared basis. The pilot that we've been doing over the last several months has been looking at potential benefits of providing iPads to kindergarten and first grade students on a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1 basis. Judy came back and shared some feedback that she had from teachers as to what their preferences are, as well as providing a tentative recommendation to the committee. This will be something we discuss and is presented to the board for approval at the May meeting, so I won't go into detail here. I'll wait until May, and Judy can give everybody the lowdown. So, our next education committee is still being finalized, but tentatively planned for Tuesday, May 8th, here at the West Campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions or comments for the Education Committee?
My comment, Jeff, would be, or a question, Jeff, would be, when they were doing the 1-to-1 initiative study or whatever, did we have a budget for that in place? For what we were going to spend on the outside?
Yes, it's my understanding that any of the money that would be utilized to purchase additional iPads has been included into the 5-year plan and next year's budget.
Other questions or comments?
You can ask Judy that next month.
We move to Board Finance and Ops. Tom, who's not here. Anyone?
We haven't met.
Very good. We move on. Policy. Kent.
Okay, and for the sake, I'll try to make this short, but on April 9th, the Policy Committee held a joint meeting with the District 115 Policy Committee in the West Campus building. Present at that meeting were all members of the 67 Policy Committee. Alice Levert was there, Jeff Fowler, myself, along with Aline Fowler, who basically chaired that meeting and kept it moving at a pretty good pace. The topics at that meeting were the press issue 97, which updated certain policies that are going to be on the agenda tonight. And the topics that were involved actually are kind of interesting. The first one might be a little dry. It's the uniform grievance procedures, but the second was 4.40, which is incurring debt. 5.20 was workplace harassment prohibited, and 5.200 is conditions of employment dismissal. That will be on the agenda tonight for first reading. Also discussed, and this was solely by the 67 board, was policy 5.125 that involves social media and electronic communication. And that was authored by Jordan, who's present in the audience today, one of our few audience members. And that policy has already been adopted by the 115 board, and if approved by 67, would align that policy with the two boards, which would most likely be a plus. At the meeting, though, we did defer the policy to be reviewed by the legal committee, and also just with future reference to the existing policy that it escapes me, but was authored by two very talented members of the board. For the sake, I'm hoping that'll be approved today, and at this point, no future meetings are scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Any questions for the Policy Committee? Seeing none, we move on to the Compensation Committee chaired by Rob.
Compensation hasn't met.
Nor has the Joint Shared Services, or did we? No, I think we met before the last meeting. It's very exciting. We're going to move on to liaison reports, actually. NSSCD, where Suzanne probably did meet.
Yes, NSSCD met, on April 11th, and I'm just going to share a few highlights from my report, but if you have any questions about anything else that was in it, feel free to ask. Dr. Schneider, the superintendent, reported that his site visits in the past month included observing ELS classrooms, which is Education and Life Skills, in District 35, and leading trainings for District 36 and other member district staff. He also informed the Leadership Council that a draft of action plans for the strategic plan are now being shared for feedback across stakeholder groups, and the final document will be presented at our June meeting. He announced that NSSCD was also a host site for a meeting to establish an Illinois chapter of the National Disability Organization, TASH, which was the one you may remember I went to their conference in December, and that has already happened. With regard to the action plans, I just got a copy of that last night at an advisory committee meeting that I was at. They have a cycle of what we call the chutes and ladders that NSSCD goes through with their budgeting process throughout the year, where they meet with superintendents, they meet with special ed directors, they meet with CFOs or business leaders from each district, and then they bring things to the Leadership Council for feedback, and then they do it again. And so all these action steps are going to those groups, and then they are going to the advisory committee at NSSCD, and then they will be brought to the Leadership Council, and then I will bring it back to all of you in terms of what they are actually going to be pursuing in the next 3 years in terms of action steps to support the strategic plan that I shared previously. We also had a report from Ms. Lynn Clark, who is the Administrator for Educational and Life Skills Services at NSSCD, and she's actually been working closely with our team on the SAIL supports and services that Jeff had mentioned as well. Their program operates 18 classrooms hosted across 6 member districts and provides direct student placement and coaching services for 15 districts out of the 18 in the region. ELS students receive instruction in settings across the school and community and are integrated with their grade level peers in general education classrooms where appropriate. They are supported by a transdisciplinary team of special education teachers, intervention specialists, therapists, general education staff, and others whose skills support the students' diverse needs. The ELS program is based on 5 core components: academics, communication, social emotional life skills, and vocational skills. Curricula in these areas are the foundation for instructional decisions in ELS classrooms, and these curricula are reviewed on a 5-year cycle. She highlighted how ELS services can support districts' changing needs and how partnerships can develop to support a common standard across ELS type supports and services happening in member districts, and that is sort of a direction that they're moving to be able to better support these types of supports and services within member districts to increase the amount of access that these students have to general education. And finally, very exciting news, NSSCD is in the final stages of purchasing the Roubloff building. I've actually talked to you about it on numerous occasions. It's where we hold our board meetings, but it's also where currently SAIL and Arbor, which is another program run by NSSCD, are housed. A price has been agreed to. An inspection supposedly happened, what's today? Yesterday. And so hopefully that will be finalized. It is a building that is on the NSSCD campus in the back corner, and it's just owned currently by UCP Seguin, and we have just hopefully completed negotiations, and next time maybe I'll be able to tell you that we've closed on the deal. And that will be done without additional assessment to member districts or changes to membership or any of those. NSSCD will be able to cover it through their fund balance.
Thank you,
That is
Suzanne.
it.
Any questions regarding NSSCD? Seeing none, we move on. Thank you. Legislative Liaison, Tom is not here tonight. Back to Suzanne for the Spirit of 67.
Very exciting news from Spirit of 67. So the Spirit of 67 Foundation met in Haskins on Tuesday, April 10th, and approved 23 grants, awarding $278,890 worth of funding back to District 67 for the 2018-19 school year. In addition to that, they also set aside $10,000 to be used for Founders Grants, which, as you may recall, are grants that when schools come up with an idea during the course of the year that's time-sensitive that they want to implement right away, rather than waiting on the grant cycle, they have the opportunity to apply for these smaller grants in that way. But some of the highlights that are very exciting, number one being that the Cherokee Playground grant, which had already been approved but not announced publicly, was approved and announced publicly at Cherokee. But also, there are a few others that really complement the work that the district is doing to update our facilities and to effectively support Readers Workshop and to improve social-emotional learning experiences for our students. The first one is Amplify DPM and Complete the Classroom. This grant is for just over $73,000 and will provide new projection systems that will be protected appropriately, being that they will be in gymnasiums, as well as screens and built-in audio systems for all of the DPM gymnasium spaces, as well as a new built-in audio system for the DPM Fitness Center. Similarly, projection and audio systems for the elementary schools is a grant for just over $29,000 that will provide new built-in projection systems in all of those kinds of spaces. At Cherokee and Everett, at Cherokee and Everett, they will get projection and audio systems. At Sheridan, they already have an audio system that's built in, so they will get the projection system added to what they have. It will facilitate when they have full school assembly type things, when they bring in outside fine arts presentations, visiting author presentations, visiting scientist presentations. The wellness teachers will be able to use it for things like, we have this drum fit program, we have a number of other programs that our wellness teachers use, where there are videos and screen interactions and things like that that help facilitate the classes that they'll be able to use it for, as well as at DPM concerts and things like that that are happening. The Spirit has also agreed to provide matching funds up to $60,000 to invest, and I put a period there instead of a comma. That is not 60 with an extra zero. It is $60,000 to invest in growing the kindergarten through fifth grade classroom libraries across the district, with the goal of eventually having over 1,000 books in each of the classrooms as recommended based on research-based best practices for Reading Workshop. And this grant will serve to accelerate the process of building those classroom libraries. Spirit will also be bringing in a young man named Matt Wilhelm, who is a 3-time BMX X Game champion, 2-time national champion, and a finalist on America's Got Talent, to do a series of assemblies at every building. He educates and empowers K-8 students through a thrilling performance with his BMX tricks, as well as his anti-bullying message that incorporates kindness, bullying and bystander intervention, respect, responsibility, safety, perseverance, growth mindset, and resilience. His school assembly program is one of the most popular school assemblies in the country and aligns with our social emotional learning curriculum. All students, grade K-8, will benefit from this grant, and there are many more, including the Spirit Studio at DPM, which will be a new music studio space where they will be able to edit video, they will get video equipment and all the music and editing equipment that they need to create professional quality music recordings and video recordings. And the space is large enough that they can have small groups of students in there to do recording. And I think that's it, as well as the typical visiting authors, fine arts, and visiting scientists that they do in partnership with the APT. The home tour is May 10th. Tickets are available on the Spirit website. If anyone wants to volunteer for the home tour, let me know. I'll hook you up with the links that you need for the home tour captains, the housing captains, because they are always looking for volunteers, and you get a discounted ticket if you volunteer. The next Spirit Board meeting will be May 22nd at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Suzanne. Questions for Spirit of 67? See, now we move to Jeff for Executive APT.
The Executive APT Board has not met since our last meeting. They are holding their annual new board, old board meeting tomorrow morning, and that'll be their last meeting of the year.
Thank you. Questions for Jeff on Exec APT? Any liaison reports we may have missed? Public participation? We have our second member. Ed, you want to say anything as the member of the public?
I think you guys are doing a great job.
Very good. We'll move on to action items. Thank you.
You are too.
Yes, you are. All right, action items. First up, may I have a motion to accept the hearing officer's recommendation denying the suspension appeal filed by student number 2270283. The superintendent will provide a letter to the parents of this student reflecting this determination as noted in executive session. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please, Eileen.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
And I just want to note that I will not be calling Mr. Ford's name, but he is not available tonight. He's at working.
So the motion passed. Thank you. No worries. May I have a motion to approve the 2018-2019 staff compensation as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the staff compensation? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye?
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the amended 2017-2018 calendar?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the amended 2018-2019 school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
May I have a motion to approve the amended 2019-2020 calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the 2018-2019 Board of Education meeting dates?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion?
Are we including January now?
Yes, all the months are included.
And so what day is January now?
22nd, I believe?
January 22nd. Yep. Excellent. Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the board delegated levels of authority?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions?
We've done this before. Yeah, we did it last year. I didn't look at policy, I apologize, but is this different from what's already in policy relative to the approved levels of authority approval?
Yeah, it's specific to the construction and change orders. After you've approved a total for construction, the change orders, though, could be negative or positive. And this is the exact format and the amounts that we approved last year.
Should we put this in a policy since we seem to vote on it every year?
You'll vote on it every time that we have construction. I think the amounts may change. The first time we did it, they had much lower thresholds because the projects were only, $500,000 versus $7 million from last year. Going forward. So it will vary, I think.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So did we do 10%? Was it 10% we did last year?
15.
I don't remember how we came at the number. I know I took last year's memo and just updated it.
Okay. Because I wasn't 100% certain which project this was referring to. Is this a $2 million project?
I would include under that right now the HVAC, boiler project, the Cherokee Playground, anything that the board has already approved
So what
this summer.
ballpark number is that?
And the lighting and the ceiling. Probably $3 million-ish.
My only concern is really for board members, is I definitely want to give the administration flexibility to make change orders. The cumulative number of 300,000 seems like a lot of money to me, and I don't want projects slowed up. So I think it read that if change order up to 15,000, they can do, and then tell us about it, which I'm fine with. 300,000 seemed like a lot to me, in terms of the cumulative number. I don't know if others had that feeling or not.
Well, because it's of each project. So to get to it's not that there's a $300,000 threshold, it's that it's 10% of each, but it says the total authority for change orders approved by the administration cannot exceed 10% of each project's total without further granting of authority. So, like, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, if that were to be happening across the board, I would imagine we would be hearing about it in one of these ways. Is that not true?
I think it'd have to be pretty major to hit 10%.
I agree with
Yeah,
you.
but that's Mike's
That's my
point.
That's entirely my point.
I agree with you, Mike.
It would be major to be to 10%, and it would be major if it got to 9%. So, and to repeat what Rob said, that is my point, that maybe, in my mind, maybe there's some level before 10% that we should be involved in, not after the fact. I'm not sure. If I'm the only one who feels like this, fine, and we'll move on.
In your mind, Jen, how many projects are there going on this summer?
I put HVAC boilers and electrical together, because we bid them together. So that's one. Cherokee Playground would be two, and I put ceilings and lights together. So I think right now we have 3 major projects, construction projects.
I mean, I would think something where we could say 10% per project or a maximum of 100,000 or something like that, right? And then you'd have to just call a meeting. I mean, we can vote an extension again, but I think $300,000 without ever asking is a lot of money, which is unreasonable. It's not going to happen.
Right, it'd have to be 300,000 of things underneath 15,000 and under.
Right. Because you also, anytime you hit a mark that's above these other marks, you have to come anyway. So that would be a lot of tiny I mean,
I know.
it's like 12 per like 12 of these.
But if it's never going to happen, then why put it in?
Yes, you're saying my point, maybe more eloquently. But
The one comment is on the first category about change orders up to 15. And again, that seems to have no reporting back to the board. And I'd like to see at least some aggregate recording going back to the board. We might not have to vote on it, but I think it should be published to the board.
you have thoughts on this, Mike?
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation here. So, the 10% threshold is, I think if you picked a dollar amount, you said, look, it's going to be $3 million, and if we exceeded, break those projects up, if we exceeded $100,000 on any one of them, that would get you closer to what you want without possibly incurring more meetings. So let's think to Rob's point, to break it down and say, look, if we get up to $100,000, is that what you're saying, Rob?
That is the number I used. I'm not saying it's the right number. I think you can just edit it to say cannot exceed the minimum of 10% or $80,000 or $50,000 of each project. I think that'd be fine. Minimum of 10% or $50,000, or minimum of 10% and $100,000, whatever you want.
Another factor.
When you say in $50,000 or $80,000, I just am trying to understand, does that mean 10% of each project or $50,000 total, then come back and talk to us? Okay. But the money number, I know it's the lesser of the two, I understand that, but you're saying the money number is not in an individual project, it's in grossly across projects?
I would say it is an individual project, because this is each project. So I'd say if you do include a dollar number, it's still within each project. The problem is the 10% number is a good number for something like the playground. and it's a bad number for something like the lights, right? And so you actually think you need a percentage number and a dollar number and just say the minimum per project. That's how I would say it.
Yeah, one note on this,
Jen's not going to care. I mean, we might as well just write down what we want.
We have a history of on time, under budget, so put whatever you're comfortable in.
right, and we also, one of the other things that every week there's an update on this is what's going on to the board. So if there were a point in time
So
when
that's the point, though. Then, so given all that, why do we, given all that, given our history, all of that's the point, then it seems like we're given, I'm exaggerating, but we're given a lot of authority without any particular need, and the board hasn't said we don't want to meet if we need to. We don't want to meet if it's some little thing, but frankly, if it is some big thing and it is starting to push these limits, maybe we do want to meet.
if you broke that, those three projects down by dollar figures within, 10 or 20%, what would each of those be?
I think we are 1.2-ish, I want to say, on lights and ceilings, similar probably on the air handlers, boilers, electrical, I have to look them up exactly. And then our playground was 400 and some thousand, I think, which a big chunk is furniture.
Yeah, so if we had a number of not to exceed $75,000 on the first two projects and not to exceed $30,000 on the last one, would that be something?
If you want to think of the Haskins project, so I actually looked at that recently. We had 47 change orders. Probably half of them were credits. So it does vary, and sometimes they need a very quick response, which is why we're looking for the authority on the smaller things. I mean, it might be simple as, $1,000 credits coming in and out. I think it only exceeded the 15 to 25 with notice, I want to say maybe 3 times during the course of that entire project, if you think about the scope of that.
So lowering it doesn't affect you?
Not so, no, I said pick
Good.
a different
Yeah.
number. I think that's
'Cause,
fine.
That, again, is feeding my comment. I don't want to affect the project speed. If something big comes up, the board hasn't said they're adverse to meeting, and I'm not looking to set a precedent of giving away our authority, particularly, as you're saying, for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, maybe looking at these dollar amounts then would be a simpler way to go. Instead of $15,000, make that $10,000 that admin has latitude, $20,000 that the superintendent would have, but would communicate that change to the board. And then anything beyond $20,000 would require a meeting of the board. You just lower those three numbers.
Well, are you concerned about the individual bullets, Mike, or more the last paragraph where what the total is?
I'm open to all of it. I just feel like we're giving a lot of authority for no reason, and it does set precedent. And a year from now, we do say, what did we do last year?
Right.
And I just don't really, it's not actually adding value to you, you're saying, and it's giving away authority for no reason, I'm saying. So I like the numbers you're saying better. They're lower. I don't have a specific proposal. I like what you said just fine.
Yeah, I think these, what I can tell you is that the numbers that the board agrees to drive a huge amount of focus and attention. So if we have a number that is even approaching Jen needing to come to me, she's super good about letting me know, hey, I think we might have one coming at you. And then likewise, if it's going to be beyond that, and she's super communicative with that. So whatever number that you pick, it will be applied with force.
Well, I would flip it back to you. I've heard you and Jen both say over the last 5 minutes that you rarely, if ever, approach these numbers. You've heard me say, I'm not really looking to slow it down, but I'm not looking to give away authority for no reason. What is a lower number that you're comfortable with that isn't going to slow things down, but isn't giving away authority and setting precedent for no reason?
Right, what's the minimum authority that we can give
Feeling comfortable?
that makes it still work for you?
I mean, Jen, you jump in here, but I would think that 10,000 and 20,000 would be a lower number that we would hit more often, but still rarely.
Do we need to, is this time sensitive?
Just before we break ground, or is
Yeah,
it-
so you're not,
you can
so
break
we're not really starting until June, right?
Well,
so-
we did some work over spring break, but we've not done anything major.
I guess I'll just ask the question. Is a better option than us debating the number, you taking it back and trying to, you've heard at least what a couple of us, myself, started it, said, do you want to just take a second go-around and try to find a minimum number that you're comfortable without giving away authority for no reason?
Jen, you have thoughts on that? I mean, the 10 and 20 sound good to me, but
There's no harm in delaying, but those numbers are very workable. I would say we get a fair number that are probably between, 5 and 8,000 plus and minus.
All right, so,
Yeah.
go ahead. You got-
I wouldn't change the board approval dollar value from 25,000 since that's in policy. So why would we make exceptions for this? It just doesn't make sense to me.
I would leave the bullet points the way they are. We only change the overall conditional, yeah. We can do that tonight.
What's your suggestion?
I would say just say the minimum of 10% or $50,000 in total per project. That's what I would say.
So since you've got good words, can you make a counter proposal to that effect?
So I guess I'll move to amend whatever we're talking about, the board delegated levels of authority to read a minimum of 10% or $50,000 in total per project. For the what?
For the cannot exceed.
For the cannot exceed part.
Is there a second? I second it.
I was going to say.
Okay. Eileen, did you get what you need in terms of documentation? Okay.
Oh, 50,000 is right. Is that too low, Jen, or not? Let's change it to 80,000.
Okay.
We'll change it to 80,000.
Right.
Okay.
You still have to second.
So how would that last paragraph read then, as a result?
It would read, "The total authority for change orders approved by the administration cannot exceed the lesser of 10% or $80,000 of each project, 10% of each, the lesser of 10% of each product's total or $80,000 on an individual project without further granting of authority from the Board of Education."
So that would suggest that once the amount of change orders got to $80,000 on a particular project, every additional change order, even if it's only for $1,000, would have to be approved by the board?
Well, what it mean really is if we ever hit 60,000, Jen's going to call a board meeting and update us on what's happening, and we'll figure out if we want to pass an extension. It's not like they don't that they're going to talk to the board right when we hit 80 and things are going to slow to a grind, right? They'll talk to us when it hits 50 or 60 and say, hey, we're in trouble, let's come and talk.
That's what they should do. That's sort of the point. And then they come talk to us, and at that point, they say, can we extend it another $30,000? And we understand what's going on, or we don't, and we say yes or no.
Yeah, I would not want to get into the scenario where then we're approving every change order past that point. Yeah, we would just rechange that, we would just adjust the authority at that point.
Other comments or questions on Rob's counter? Roll call vote, Eileen, please, on Rob's counter motion.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next up, may I have a motion to approve the Deer Path Middle School boiler room abatement bid in the amount of $53,900.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Novit? Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the ECRA contract renewal through June 2019 in the amount of $38,524?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion?
Will we hear from ECRA in the upcoming year?
Yes?
Good.
Other comments, discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, may I have a motion to approve the authorization to develop Deer Path Middle School Science Labs construction drawings in the amount of $188,200?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion?
I guess my question to Jen or Mike is, the Exhibit B included 3 scenarios, and they're not that far apart from one another. The question is what's the probability that it comes in 50% higher than the worst scenario, or just a lot higher than we're expecting? I was told something at our last meeting about, oh, well, that won't happen because we gave them a budget or something like that. I mean, are we positive? I mean, this goes all the way back to a different question about something in the past, about whether or not the plans can sit on the shelf. And we found out that they couldn't, at least in the form we had them in. And so my question is, what is the probability that those numbers are not the right numbers? Because if they came in at 8 million, I don't think we're doing the project for 8 million. Right now we're expecting 2 million, 1.9 or 2 million, or 2.5, I guess, with all the contingency fees. And if it came in at 5 or 7, I think we'd balk. So that's my question.
I think I'll chime in first and then ask Jen to jump in as well. So the 7-8 labs are in significantly worse shape than the 5-6. So if it came down to, hey, we're gonna vastly exceed what we thought the project was going to be, we would probably be coming to you with some sort of a triage of some sort, saying, look, we're going to double down here, and then a point in the future where we want to do 1 or 2 labs on the east side. So I think that these numbers, to accomplish the primary objective in my mind, is to put 7 and 8 first. I can't imagine that those wouldn't be solid numbers. Now, whether we come up with some super duper plan that vastly exceeds them, you want to let your staff work with the architects as well and see how that winds up shaking out. But in my mind, there's a clear triage, 7-8 first and then 5-6 later. Jen, I don't know what other thoughts you might have.
Just on the pricing, so 2 things. One is there's been a fair number of middle school science labs done in the area, so I think they have a pretty good, benchmarking of what design might look like and the cost on that. This is doing a medium to heavy renovation, so pretty much gutting them for the most part and putting in new things. The second, so I do think it's solid from the architect, but I also took the details from Perkins and Will and I sent them to Pepper and asked them, based on what they know about construction and what they've been seeing, are these solid numbers? Do they think they're low? Do they think they're high? And they sent me back some analysis. They think they're probably in the ballpark, and it'll ultimately come down to design, but we're probably pretty close.
I have a question. Does the architect understand what our budget is?
Well, the budget that we included are these numbers as our base.
But there'll be another go-around. Once we do the design, if they do their job properly and they're looking at HVAC and load-bearing walls and all that fun stuff, they'll be coming back when they bid it out to say, okay, here's another round to say we are going to exceed or we're fine, and we can approve at that time how we want to triage the numbers. So we're not going to be starting anything until we've had a chance to get a better feel for the actual numbers, right?
Right. They'll do the design, which we will share along the way, and then just like we bid out the other projects, which probably will be split into multiple construction packages, a recommendation will be made to either reject them all, which is certainly, a possibility. I agree with Rob, if it comes in at $9 million, middle school science labs, that probably won't be completed. But yeah, there'll be another round of approvals.
But my issue, Jeff, as you said before we get started, we're starting tonight. We're starting with $190,000 tonight. And that's the step I don't want to take if if there's a big probability or even a small but significant probability that we're not ever going to go forward. I guess I didn't ask either person if the plans can sit in the shelf, but that still's got me scared. To be honest, I don't like your answer, Mike. If I took $50,000 to go buy a Lexus and somebody said you can only get a Corolla for $50,000, I might not buy the Corolla either, right? And so if we were asked to vote for $2 million for 2 science labs, we might say no. Jen's comment, I guess Jen's comment is going to convince me to vote for it, which is if the architects and I think answering Jeff's question, the architects sort of know our budget, Pepper says we're in the ballpark. So I am taking what you're saying, Jen, is there's a very, very small probability that we aren't really close to the right ballpark.
Correct.
Not that we will hold you against that, but okay.
But also, the money that we're approving tonight only gets spent to its max if we go forward with the project, correct?
It'll, most of it is for the development and the design. So if you choose not to go forward, the only thing you're saving on is basically your contract execution, right? The final follow through the site visits. So yes, we could.
But there's some, like, it's there, doesn't this include all their follow-up with the project as they do the project, or no?
That it's not quoted as a proposal separately for that, which I think is what Rob's referring to, and it might have been the playground project.
Right.
Where we still had to come back and pay for the execution of the contract. It does have a plus or minus 10% provision, and if the construction cost comes in plus or minus 10, then that fee will adjust. So like some of the other projects we bid recently that came in much lower, then that would lower the fee as well.
Other comments, questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Novot?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy 7:260, exemption from physical education?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Novot?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
May I have a motion to approve the first reading of Press Issue 97, including 2:260 Uniform Grievance Procedure, 4:40 Incurring Debt, 5:20 Workplace Harassment Prohibited, 5:200 Terms and Conditions of Employment and Dismissal. May I have a motion for that?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mr. Novot?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the first reading of Policy 5:125, Social Media and Electronic Communication?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
No, I have
Oh,
a
sorry.
comment and discussion. So, Jordan, yes, please. So the question that came out of the policy meeting from me was twofold. One was, did we present, so when this policy, not the policy we're looking to approve, the current policy,
Yeah.
when it was developed 4 years ago, it was obviously vetted by legal, and we were told that it was perfectly fine the way it was worded. It covered us. It tied into the acceptable use agreement that everybody was required to sign. Was that shared with legal to ask them if this policy is a more effective or ironclad way of having people abide by it than the current policy?
It was, and they agreed that it absolutely is.
So is that suggesting that the current policy is weak?
I don't know that it's so much suggesting the current policy is weak, but this policy lays out in greater specificity some of those areas we're concerned about, texting, communications with kids in specific, and by enlarging it, which it does significantly, it carries more force as it's coming from the board. These are the outlines that we are setting down for the use of technology by our staff.
And so you're saying by having that in this level of detail in policy, The legal is telling us that is a better approach than just saying in the policy that people have to abide by this.
It is.
That's what it currently says.
Yeah.
You're required to abide by, to sign and abide by the acceptable use agreement.
Yes.
Which is essentially what this is.
This is, yeah, it's
So,
largely expanded, though. The difference...
Fair enough, but you can always expand the acceptable use agreement and still...
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, it was, I don't know, I don't have a problem with this per se, it's just, as we've talked, it's very cumbersome and burdensome, which we've tried to avoid, and
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to understand how this is significantly better than what we already have in place.
Because in this, it's the board laying out, there is a vote on this. The board is saying they agree on this. It's not the administration, it's not the board delegating something to the administration. It's not the board saying the administration can get this and review this yearly. This is the board looking at the policy we're laying out, which violations of it would carry consequences for staff, essentially, and saying we agree with this, and were there to be any discipline or heaven forbid, dismissal or anything coming from this policy. We have read this, we agree to this, and should something reach us, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that this policy exists, the board has approved it, and that there are measures that will be taken for violations. It's just saying that at a higher level than just your administrative team.
I know that we usually try to avoid having this level of detail in policy. From my time being on the policy committee, we usually try to avoid that. But I do understand and actually support, in this particular case, getting more detailed, because these are, this is all stuff that people are exploring, it's changing, it's new, it's always, I think it's one of the trickiest things for people to be able to understand where their limits are, what constitutes, this is my district, I'm using district resources for this, what's okay, what's not okay. And so I think as explicit as you can be, and with the backing of us, I do think that there's some, I think it's worthwhile.
And just to piggyback on that, one thing I want to comment on, it was mentioned in the report earlier, that this was put in place in District 115. One of the things I just want to speak to very quickly is how effective it was really quickly, just due to the level it came from. Talked to Tim, who's the athletic director over there, with his coaches, which is one of our areas of concerns. And this changed the culture real quick. It was highly effective.
Yes.
Beyond my expectations, quite honestly.
So the short answer to the issue that was put to the attorneys that we left the policy meeting saying we would follow up on was, look, if we have an acceptable use policy that is referred to in a short policy, does that carry the same weight as having all this verbiage in there? And the answer was, you are better off having all of this in your policy than having it in an AUP that is separate from your policy manual. That's the, and now they will, will one work? Probably. They are simply much more comfortable with having all of this in there because they think it gives it greater force. And I agree that
It should be noted, though, that I don't think 115 had a social media policy in place prior to this, so, did they?
No.
No, so
Or at least
that's why you saw the
nothing-
culture change immediately, because they didn't have anything like we already have in place, so, anyway.
Related question, Mike, does that change your view? You've always been a less is more in the policy. Does that change your view in general? Or is you view
No,
this as very unique?
I can't stand having long policies, but in this case, I don't want to tell you to not follow your attorney's very clear advice.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to thank Jordan because this took a lot of time and energy to put together. It's very detail-oriented, and although we did have a policy in place, we were proactive, it sounds like, maybe more so than the high school. It's always good to review and update, and so thank you for putting this together.
No, happy to do it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. Levert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the settlement agreement for student A pertaining to special education and that the superintendent is authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Comments or discussion? Questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the human resources items as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We now move to the consent agenda. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of a board member. I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Approval of disbursements, payrolls, and financial statements, March 2018. Minutes of a regular meeting and workshop, March 20th, 2018. Minutes of an executive session, March 20th, 2018. Minutes of a special board meeting, April 16th, 2018. Minutes of an executive session, April 16th, 2018. Disposal of audio recordings, June 28th, 2016. Is there any item that any board member would like removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments? Roll call vote on the consent agenda, please.
Mrs. LeVert?
Aye.
Mr. Novit?
Aye.
Mrs. Sands?
Aye.
Mr. Borkowski?
Aye.
Mr. Folker?
Aye.
Dr. Lemke?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We had 4 FOIA requests since we last met. Illinois Retired Teachers Association, commercial, status complete. Flex Landscaping, commercial, status complete. Shriver Center, commercial, status complete. And NBC5, commercial, status complete. Announcements. May 10th, 2018 is the Spirit of 67 Home Tour. Tuesday, May 22nd is our next Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. right here in the West Campus Boardroom. May I have a motion to adjourn the Lake Forest School District 67 Board meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Kent, thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Alice, you and I have to sign stuff.